Hey, what's up everybody? It's your boy Tyshawn, aka coldlabz. So in the last video, we actually went through the process of actually making our own sprite sheet animation for our video game. So for the people who don't want to actually use what we got or needs to create these things, you can pause the video after I explain to you the necessary dimensions for it. So go to the game 1 folder that should be on your desktop. Our background width, if you go down to the properties and go over to your details, the background width is 800 in the width, and the height is 600. The next thing you're going to be needing in the properties, if you go to the ground and to go over to your details, you see the width is 850 and the height is 150. After that, you're going to go over to where it says orb. Even though we know it's a fireball, go to properties, go down, click on details, and then if you look, the properties of that orb or fireball is 120, and then the height is 120. And then for the player, it's going to be slightly different because he's going to have animations and different steps to him. So go over to details. After you hit properties, you notice it says width 300 and height 100. So that's for people who aren't actually part of the course and everything and hasn't created the actual game 1 folder with us. So you can go ahead and make your stuff, and we're going to get started. The next thing you guys need to do is go to your text editor and actually open that up. And once that loads, go on your left hand side, right click, and then you got to make 2 new files. The very first file, we're going to call that index.html. So let's type that, index.html. And then under that, you need to right click and then make another file. And let's call this file game.js. So game.js. So now we got index.html and we got game.js. So the next thing we need to do is open up our browser and let's go to phaser.io. That's phaser.io. Once phaser.io loads up, we need to go ahead and look for the template. If you go on the right hand side, go down a little bit, you see the words in black. It says download and get started. We click on that. That way we can fork it from GitHub or download it, whatever way we want to go with it. But me, I'm going to actually, download it. So go over to your right hand side, click on download phaser from GitHub again. So once you click that, you notice you got a bunch of options that comes down. It says clone, JS, mini.js, and zip, and tar.gz, whatever that stands for. We want to click on min.js. When you click on that, it's going to ask you to download that. And once you get that fully downloaded, I need you to find it in your downloads folder and then place it inside of your game 1 folder. So the next thing I need you to do is go back to your text editor. After we got that into the game 1 folder, you notice that it populates now. So go over to where you see index.html. Let's type exclamation point, capital doc, DOC, type, TYPE, this is one word, and then HTML. Under that, you need to put HTML. We're going to open and close that off. Go to inside the HTML, hit enter. After that, write the word head. And inside the head, you want to put style. So you type STYLE and then make sure you close that off. So now we can finally get out of the head typing. So under the head, let's type body. So open, close, body, and then hit enter. Now we need to actually import the game's JavaScript files into the game. So you type script, then source, src, equals, then the string phaser.min.js, then close it off. So what that's going to do is import the actual phaser functions and stuff that we need to make the game inside of the game. And after that, go to the next line, let's hit enter, then type script, then source src equals string game.js. So now that phaser is actually loaded, the game's going to load right behind it, because remember, JavaScript is written line by line and read line by line. So if it's not in order, it's not going to work at all. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is actually save this to the desktop. So let's highlight everything and then copy it. And before we save it, let's discuss this reason we downloaded phaser.min.js. The reason that was actually downloaded is because in the event that the website start working or you can't use phaser anymore, you still got the game copy for yourself, and you can continue developing whatever you want. So now back to what we was about to do. Let's go to our desktop, right click, go down to new, and then click on folder. So now it says new folder. Let's go inside new folder, right click, go to new, and then go down and let's click on text document, and then let's name this text document index.html. so index.html, hit enter. After that, open the file up and paste this layout that we created for ourselves inside of that, and let's save it. Now we have our own template for the HTML portion of the page. Let's go ahead and X that off. We don't need that right now, alright? So let's go back over to our browser. Let's go all the way back up to the top where it says learn, then click on it. After you see the little guy in the middle, you know, the little phaser dude, let's go down to where it says make your first game and click on that. After that, select your language. Myself, I'm going to select English because I think that's the obvious language that I'm speaking at this moment. So I click English, go down a little bit. We got some of the configurations right here, but it's not the entire configurations that we need. So let's go down to where it says next. Click on that till we get to about like page 3. Go down again, click on it again, go down again. Well, okay, yeah. So if you look it down here in page 3, you see the same type of wording and stuff. So we want to copy where it says variable config all the way down to where it shows the scenes, and then we're going to paste it in to our game.js back on our text editor. So let's bring it to the text editor. Let's look for game.js and let's paste it in there. So now we got that pasted in there. Let's do a little explanation on what we're looking at. So if you notice, it says variable config equals an object. That object has different properties like we mentioned in different videos. This is type phaser.auto. What auto does is, depending on your browser and what it can handle, it flips between a couple of different things. It might be WebGL, it may be something different. The width is the actual length of the document itself, the game itself. We made the background 800 and the height 600. So where it says physics, this is how the game actually has its physics. You go down to where it says arcade, and then it says gravity y equals 300. When we're talking about like measurements when it comes to the computer, the x-axis is always going to be your farthest to your left, and then your y is going to be the top, you know, the farthest to the top. And once you start going down more and more, that y number increases. The same with the x's when you go all the way across the screen. So if you want a negative number, you would go backwards. You want a negative number with a y, you would go more upward toward the top of the screen. So that's why it says y 300. So anything that's going to get this gravity is going to get drugged down to the bottom of the screen. So the next thing it says debug false. Let's change that to true. So debug allows you to see like hitboxes or where things are placed at on the screen. That's going to be very crucial when it comes to making video games. The next thing it says scene. The area where it says scenes, we're going to actually delete that because the default version of this game has you just making the scene card preload, so therefore it loads preload. We're going to add an entire scene because when you add entire scenes to a game, that's how you go from one screen to the next screen, like a start screen to the select screen to the game screen. So we're going to actually do it like that and get rid of the stuff that's in here. So let's highlight that object where the scene is and let's get rid of it. So no longer we're going to have preload create an update as a scene. We're going to make an actual scene itself, and we're going to call our scene just the letter G. So erase that and then put the letter G. Right now the game template is almost complete, but it's missing a few different things. So we need to actually type in what actually caused the game to work, the configuration. So we type variable, then game equals new, and then phaser dot game open close, then type in the word config. So now we're passing all the configurations down to the phaser game itself. The next thing we want to do is actually create that G that we got inside of that scene. So let's go ahead and get that done. So you type G equals new phaser dot scene and open close, and then inside of that put string G. So now G actually exists for the scene. But now before it said that it was a preload or create an update in the scene. We got to make our own preload, create an update to be passed down. So one of the things we want to add is the initialization, because you might need to use that from time to time. So let's type g.init, that's initialization or init, equals function, open close, and then the curly braces, and inside that we want to put life equals 3. Let's just go ahead and put that in there right now, you know. next thing we're gonna do g.preload equals function open close, and then we want to do the object curly braces next to it. Hit enter, go down the line, let's put g.create equals function open close, and then the curly braces, and inside that hit enter. The next thing we want to do is create the update. So we do g.update equals function, then open close, then the curly braces, then hit enter in that. So now we got the entire template. So once we click on live server reload, or actually trying to view the game, you notice that the game is a small little square veered off to your left hand side, well, a rectangle. But we need to fix that. In order to make this scale to the size of your page, we're gonna have to go back to the index.html where it says stylet, and then we're gonna have to type some stuff in there. So inside that style, let's type the star symbol should be above the number 8, and then it's gonna be an object, the open close curly braces. Then type the word margin and 0. Alright, next line, type height 100%, and then width 100%. So what we're looking at here, this is the Cascade styling sheet, the CSS. We're not going to get too in depth with this like we said before, but this is how we're going to stretch out the page for this video game. Seeing that we got both of these done now, we have our game.js template and we have our index.html template. Let's do the same thing. So before we start with that, let's highlight the index.html once again. Let's open that file back up. If you closed it, it should be in the new folder. Let's open up index.html and let's highlight that old HTML and delete that, and then paste a brand new one on top of that. In that same folder, we need to go ahead and make a new file as well. Let's go down to text document, and then let's name this phaser, PHASER game template, TEMPLATE. Hit enter. After that, let's open that file up, and then let's go back to the phaser.js. Let's highlight all of that, copy it, and then let's paste it in there. So now we got a HTML template and we got a phaser template. So every time we want to make a brand new video game, we can come to these files and just get right into it. So now that we got all that, let's go over to the game.js in our text editor. Let's go down to where we put g.preload equals function. Let's type this dot load dot image, and then open close, then put string bg, then a comma, and then put bg.png. The reason we put bg.png is because that's what we call the bg on the left hand side. It's called background. Background is bg, and on the left hand side right here next to image, this is what we actually decided to call it, so once we're going to use it below, we're going to call it by this title, BG. So the next thing we're going to do is this dot load dot image, and then open close, then put the string orb, then orb.png. We named our fireball orb, so we're going to call it orb as well. So orb and orb.png. Next, let's do this dot load dot image, and then ground, and then comma ground.png for the same reasons as the ones above. But what's going to be different about this next one is going to be the player. The player has the sprite sheet, so we're going to have to actually put the player in here in a different way. So you put this dot load dot sprite sheet, and then open close, string player, comma player dot png. Then after that, do another comma and put object. It's going to be frame width. The width is going to be capitalized, but it's going to be one word. So frame width, and then 100, and frame height 100. Even though the object that we put in here as a player is the width of 300, the game actually looks at it in increments. So if we put like 120, it's going to look at the game character in a weird way. So we have to put it in increments and make sure that the numbers actually add up correctly. 100 plus 100 plus 100 is 300, so that's equal to the entire amount of the sprite sheet we made for the player. So we're gonna go with that now. So next, I'm gonna need you guys to go to g.create equals function. Inside of there, we're gonna type bg equals this dot add dot sprite, and then do open close, and then we're gonna put for the x axis, we're gonna put 0, and then for the y, we're gonna put 0 as well, and then put a comma, and then we put string bg. So now we have an actual background in the game. But if you go to the game, you notice that the background looks kind of messed up. The reason behind that is because the background is centered in the middle of the actual pointer itself. So the center of 0 would be the center of the picture. But we want to fix that. So if we wanted to go to the very tip of the actual image, instead of it being 0.5, which is the center, and the default, which is not seen, you put on the end of the BG, you put dot set origin, and then open close and put the number 0. So now instead of it being 0.5, the hidden number, the hidden parameters is going to be 0, and it's going to actually fix that problem. So how do we actually view this stuff, and how do I even know any of this stuff? Simple answer, I studied. But at the same time, you can learn it as well. So if you go to your actual game and you right click and then go down to spec element, after that search for your console. And once you go to your console, you can actually look at the properties of these objects. So in this case, we type BG. So type BG and then hit enter. So now you see all the properties that's inside of the BG. You got certain different things. You got active, you got alpha, you got body, you got blend, you got all that stuff. So it even tells you the X axis, the Y, and the Z. So if you want to change any of this, you just type the name of the object and then its property. So BG dot X equals 100. So now when we hit enter, you notice the background moves over to 100. It's no longer at 0, and we can change that back. So let's do bg dot X equals 0. Now the background's back in its position. We can even change different things in here. Like if you type alpha, so let's type bg dot alpha, alpha equals 0.5, because at the moment it's at 1, but we hit enter, we're going to change the alpha of the BG. So now it's kind of faint, and the reason behind that because the alpha is kind of like the tint, like a tinted window of how see-through it is of the object. So let's get back to the game. So the next thing we want to type is bg dot set, set, and capital I interactive, open close. So what that does is make the character or whatever the object is interactive. You can actually drag it, click on it, move it around, something you interact with and something happens. So now we want to actually do something. We're going to do on the next line bg dot on, open close, and then put the string inside of it, make it say pointer down. After that, do a comma, write function, and in the inside of this function we want to put player.set velocity y, and then put -300. The reason behind this is because it's going to actually make the character jump in the air because it's a negative number. Negative goes up and positive goes down when it comes to this video game or programming. So the next thing we want to do is actually put the word life, then word, and then equals this dot add dot text, and then we want to put 50 for the X, then a comma, and then 50 for the Y, comma, and then let's put the word life and then plus life. So what that does is take the word life and add on the actual number life on the end of it. And what we're going to do with that life word is actually deduct from it every time the player gets hit by the orb. So the next thing we want to do is actually create the orb. So let's do orb equals this dot physics dot add dot sprite, then open close, and then for the X we want to put it at 700. So this is going to be on the right hand side of the screen, and then for the Y we want to put 300. So they won't be too high, they'll be kind of towards the middle, and then the actual name of the object we want to call to be the orb, we want to put orb, so string orb. And if you go down to the bottom inside of the variable configuration, you see it has physics. The default is arcade and the gravity is 200. So slowly over time they're going to drop. if I haven't already mentioned, just make sure that the debug is on true so you can actually see the hitbox and stuff around these objects that has physics on them. The next thing we want to do is create the ground. So let's do ground equals this dot physics dot add dot sprite. After that, let's do open close. So for the position of this ground, we're going to do 400 for the X and then 500 for the Y, and then put a comma, then put string, and then in the inside that string put the word ground, and then we're going to do dot set origin. Like I said before, when it's just the regular set origin is really just 0.5 and typically is in the exact center of whatever the object is. So in our case, we're going to put it right in the middle of the screen, and it's going to take the position of that actual picture and put it in half, so we don't have to really do it ourselves. The next thing you notice, if you go back to the game, the ground keeps dropping. Why does the ground keep dropping? That's a simple answer. The ground has gravity. If you go up to where it says this dot physics, you see that we gave the ground gravity. So how do we stop it from falling? We remove the gravity. And in order to do that, we type ground dot body dot allow gravity equals false. So make sure that allow and gravity is capitalized. The G has to be capitalized in that, alright? Then equal false. The next, we want to make sure that the ground can't be moved by other objects, because if the player falls on it, he's going to be able to move it because he's going to have velocity, and the ground's going to, you know, and absorb some of that velocity and somewhat move itself. So we do ground dot set, and then capital I immovable, and then open close, then true. So now the ground can't be moved at all. So now the ground's going to sit squarely in the picture and not be touched. So if you go back to the game, you notice the ground is not moving at all. The next thing we want to do is actually add the sprite player to the game so it can actually use the velocity. So let's type player equals this dot physics dot add dot sprite. We want to put him on the left hand side because the orb is going to be coming towards him from the right hand side. So his S is going to be 50, his Y is going to be 300, and then the character is going to be the player, because that's how we defined it above. After that, if you go to the game, he's going to fall through the ground because he has no real way of sitting on it. But at the same time, he's falling through the screen forever. We can stop him from falling through the screen by typing player dot set, and then it's going to be capital collide, and then capital world, then capital bounds, and then open close and write the word true. So now the player, he can he actually is set inside of the collision of the world bound. So now he can only go somewhere within the screen, otherwise, you know, he's going to go nowhere. After this, we need to go ahead and create the collision. We need to make it so that the ground and the player knows that it actually exists when it touches each other. So let's do this dot physics dot add dot collider and open close, and then inside that type the word ground for the first parameter. So it's looking for the collision between the ground and then whatever else is touching the ground. So the second thing that's going to be touching the ground, we need to do array. We're going to put two things in there. We're going to put orb and then comma and then player. So now the game is actually looking for the collision to occur between the two. So with that being said, we need to actually have a function that happens once this occurs. So the next thing you type next to that is this dot land on me, then a comma, and then for the next function parameter we're going to write no because nothing's going to happen after that. Then do one more comma and write the word this. So land on me is not nothing special. That's just what we're going to call our parameter, land on me. This is what's going to be made up. For the next thing we want to do this dot physics dot add dot collider, but instead of it being the ground trying to look for the player in the orb, we're gonna do the player in the orb, you know. So let's type for the first parameter player. After that, put a comma, then put orb, and then we're gonna call this function touch me. So let's put this dot touch me, and then do a comma no, and then a comma this. So this little no position, if you look to your left, you know it says touch me or land on me. What that is the first position is what happens first, and after that the no represents what's going to happen next. So we're saying we don't care what happened next, so that's what that represents. After this, we want to create an animation for the player because we made a sprite sheet. He needs to be doing something. All right, so let's type this anims.create. So that stands for animation. Animation is short for anims. So now in the inside of that, let's type key. The key that's looking for is the player. So let's do key, and then the string player next to it, put a comma, and then we want the frames that it's actually looking for. So we type this.anims.generate capital frame, capital numbers, and then open close, and then we're going to put the player in the inside that. So a string player, then put a comma. After that, we're going to look at what frames is going to start on and what frames is going to end on. So in the inside of that, right next to the player, where we put the comma at, you put start, and then 0, then do a comma, then end, and 2. So now you got that object right next to the player. After that, get out of that object and make a comma, go down and type repeat -1. That repeat -1 means to go infinite. Just keep on going forever and ever. So the player wings are going to keep on flapping indefinitely. And where it says frame rate, this is how fast the actual character wings are going to be flapping, or the animation is going to be running through. As some of you may have noticed, there's an error right now, and the reason we might be getting an error is because the this.landOnMe is not defined along with the this.touchOnMe. So in order to correct that, we got to create it. So let's leave the actual create area of the game, and let's make a brand new area itself. So let's type g.landOnMe equals function, and then let's put p1 and p2, and then in the inside that, we're gonna write if p2.texture.key equals player, then player.anims.play, and then player. Okay, so let's explain what this texture.key is and what this p2 is and all this other stuff. So as we said with functions, function could take actual parameters and pass them on. So in this case, the function that's going to be used for p1, the first parameter is going to be ground, and the second parameter could be two things. So we know ground is p1, so p2 we're not sure of. P2 could be orb or player if you go to the collider up there that says this.landOnMe. But if we go back down to where it says land on me, we got if p2.texture.key is equal to player, because like I said before, it could be ground or player, play the animation that you're flapping the wings. So how do you know that I'm telling you a true statement? If you really want to find out, just go back to the console and type in the actual object that you want to look at. So in our case, let's type in player.texture. Once you hit player.texture, you see that word object pops up. Click on the arrow and you see all the stuff that's attached to the actual player. So player.texture, go down to where it says key and it says player. So we want to use that, you know, we're going to do a little check with the land on me. Land on me checking to verify that player is the one touching the ground. It doesn't care that both of them touching. It's just only going to react when one of them is touching. That one thing is player. This doesn't have to be done, but I found out that this is a great way to determine what the object name is, and if a function is actually going to be taking that input or parameter for one of these two things, is going to be able to distinguish it based on the actual if statement you created. So to be honest, honestly, you could have just put null, you know, just like we put in the second parameter. We could have put the first and second parameter as null, but in that instance, you know, we needed something to happen once you're landing on them. So that's why we created our function. The next thing we want to do is create the g.touchMe equals function. You know, so let's go ahead with that. So g.touchMe equals function. And inside of that, we want to write player.y equals 0. So what that does is reset the player's y position all to the top of the screen every time it gets hit. The next thing we want to do is take a life away. So we type life minus equals 1. So it's going to increment downward because we got the minus right there, not a plus or a multiplication. So every time he gets hit, he's going to lose a life. But we need to actually see that life gets taken away. So we type life word dot set text, and then the string life plus life, like we did before. So in this instance, they're going to take the brand new number life and add it into there. After that, we want to type if life equals 0, game over equals this dot add dot text, and then for the X position, let's put 300, and then for the Y position, let's put 400, and then for the word or the string, we're gonna put game over, because it's over. He's not alive anymore. And in order to kill him off completely, let's put player dot disable and then body. It's gonna be one word, but the body gonna be capitalized, and then put true, comma true. So if you go back to your game, if the player gets hit 3 times now, he's done. But you also notice that there's no way for him to get hit because the orb isn't moving in the first place. So let's make this orb continuously move. So let's do orb.x minus equal 5, and make sure you put that inside of g.update. So g.update equals function and orb.x minus equals 5. So what they're going to do is make the orb move towards the player, but the orb is going to hit the player and it's going to keep going forever. So in order to fix that, you type right under the orb.x minus equal 5, you type if orb.x is less than or equal to negative 25, open close curly braces, then orb.x equals 810. So what that does is reset the position once the actual orb hits negative 25 and put it over to 810. So it looks like he's leaving the screen, it's coming right back and forth over and over. So at this point, if you've been following along, you know you got a game created. Congratulations, nothing special, but the next game we're going to put a little bit more effort into it. So I hope you guys are ready. Take care.